Hi guys, and welcome to Code Beauty YouTube channel. In this video, I will teach you about Singleton Design Pattern. You will learn what is Singleton Design Pattern, when and why we use it. I will show you practical example of Singleton Design Pattern, and I will teach you how to implement it. Design patterns are advanced topic in programming, and they are one of the most important topics that all developers should know. So in this short YouTube video, I will show you a simple example of Singleton Design Pattern. But if you really want to master practical programming, if you want to work on real projects together with me, and you want to start your career as a software developer, I can help you to achieve that goal as well. I have combined over 13 years of my academic experience and also practical work on many different projects, and I have created Code Beauty Academy, which is a learning platform. It is designed to teach you career-ready skills through a practical, real project and program that you can complete in just a few months. It has over 200 video lessons covering everything that you need to learn in order to get a job. As I said, you will work on real projects and you can collaborate with other developers if you want. And step by step, I will take you from beginner to expert. Majority of students who join the academy get their first job even before completing the entire program. And you can also try it out for free for 7 days to see if you like it or not. I will leave a link in the description that you can use in order to find more details. And I will also leave a special discount code that you can use in order to save some money. So if you want to learn about design patterns or any other important topic in programming in a practical way and see how it works on real projects, please visit the link in the description. And in this video, I will show you how Singleton Design Pattern works. So first, I will show you the application that we are going to build, and then we will build that application together. So here I have the application that we will build. Now let me start it. Okay, so we will get two forms that look the same. And if I click on Get Shared Data button, we will get 0. And then here as well. Now let's see what is the behavior of this counter button. So if I click on counter ++ here once, and then I click on Get Shared Data, here we will get 1. And then if I click 2 more times, okay, and then I click on Get Shared Data, here we will get 3. So this here is the counter of how many times we have clicked on this button. But something interesting is that these two forms are actually sharing the data, which means if I click on Get Shared Data on this form, I will get the same value. And then if I increase the counter here, for example, by clicking it 2 more times, so once and then twice, and then I click on Get Shared Data, we will get the same value here and also here. So this means that, as I said, these two forms are sharing the data. More specifically, they are sharing the value of this counter. So if I increment it here or here, it doesn't matter because both of these two forms will get the same data. So this application here is an example of Singleton Design Pattern, and in this video we are going to build it together from scratch. So before we start writing any code, the first question that I want to answer is, what is Singleton Design Pattern? Singleton Design Pattern is used when you want to ensure that only one instance of a particular class exists in the entire application. So only one instance of that class can exist. The second question is, what is the benefit of Singleton Design Pattern? There can be multiple benefits, but the most important and the most commonly used benefit of Singleton Design Pattern is it can be used in order to implement data sharing. And that is the example that you could see here. So these two forms are sharing this same counter value, which means that there is one central place, there is one Singleton service, and both of these two forms are accessing that same Singleton service. So when we click on this counter ++ button, that counter is not incremented on this form or on this form. It is actually incremented on that central place. And then when we increment it on this counter button here, again, the data on that central place is changed. So when we want to read that data from this form or from this form, we are reading it from the same place, which means that these two forms are sharing the same data. And in this example, we have only two forms that are sharing the data, and this is the example that I will show you and teach you how to build. But if you want to implement data sharing between more than two forms or more than two classes, I will also teach you how to do that, because it is absolutely the same and it is very simple once you learn Singleton Design Pattern. So if you watch this video until the end, you will know how to implement it on your own and how to implement data sharing between 200, 2000, or as many forms, as many classes as you want. So this is the application that we want to build, and now I will close this application, and then we will create new project together and we will start building this application together step by step. So please open Visual Studio and click on Create a New Project. Okay, and here we will create Windows Forms application with C#. So C#, Windows Forms application, and then click on Next. Okay, and I will call it Singleton App. Okay, so Singleton App, and click on Next again. And then here you can choose currently supported .NET Framework and then click on Create. And here we will get our blank application. So when I start this application, we will get only one completely empty form. And if you remember the example that I demonstrated a few minutes ago, we will need two forms. So let's do that first. Let's create another form. So I will right click on my Singleton app and then click on Add, New Item. And what I want to add is going to be New Form, so New Windows Form, and the name will be Form 2, and then click on Add. Okay, so here is our second form. Now let's add all the controls that we need. I will show you this example once more. So we need two buttons, and then we need a label where we can show the value of our counter. So I will move this to the other screen, and then I will open my toolbox. So click on View and then Toolbox, and here you can find all of the controls. So let's search for button control, and I will simply drag it and drop it on my form, and I will make it a little bit bigger. And then I will right click on my button and click on Properties, and here I will change the text and the name of this button. So the name of the button will be Get Shared Data BTN. Okay, so Get Shared Data BTN, and then the text property will be, it is here, so the text will be Get Shared Data, and that is the text that will be visible on the button. And then the name property, this one here, and that is the name that we will use in order to access this button from our C# code. And then we need another button, so I will simply copy this button and then paste it, and I will change its name and text property. So this other button, its name is going to be Counter BTN, like this, and then the text of this second button will be Counter plus plus, like this. And then the last control that we need is a label where we can show the value of our counter, where we can show our shared data. So let's open Toolbox again. I will delete this and I will search for label, and I will drag and drop it here. And then I will also go to properties of this label. I will change its text. So initially I will just put this slash symbol, and then the name of this label will be Shared Data LBL. Like this, so Shared Data Label. So these are all the controls that we need. I will just make this form a little bit smaller, like this, and then I will move all of these controls to the left and position them like this. Now this here is just one of our forms. As you already know, we have another form. So both of our forms should look the same. So I will simply copy all of these controls. So select them all and then press Ctrl C. And then let's go to our form 1. And here I will click on my form and then press Ctrl V, and I will get the same controls on my form 2. So let's also make our form 2 to be a little bit smaller, like this. And then let's just very quickly check if the names of these buttons have been copied as well. So the name of this first button is Get Shared Data BTN, that is okay. And then the name of the second button is Counter BTN. And then the name of this label should be Shared Data LBL. So everything was copied properly. And now both of our forms look the same. So right now, when I start my application, we will just see this first form because that is the only form that we start on the beginning of the application. So I will also need to start my second form manually. So let's go very quickly to the code behind of my form 1. So right click on it and then click on view code. And here in the constructor, I will create my form 2. So let's say form 2. And then let's call it form 2 and let's create a new form. And here I will simply say form2.show like this. So when form 1 is created, I also want to create form 2 and I want to start form 2 as well. So now if I start the application, as you can see, now both our form 2 and form 1 will be started. Now, if I click on these buttons right now, as you can see, nothing will happen because we still have not implemented or written any code. So now let's focus on that part. So I will stop the application and now I will create a Singleton service class. So let's add a class to our project. I will right click on my Singleton app and then click on add new item. And here I want to add new class. And I will call that class Singleton Service. So Singleton Service and then click on Add. So now the question is, what is the data that we want to share between our forms? Well, we want to share the value of our counter. So here inside my Singleton class, I will create one public variable of type int and I will call it counter. Okay, so counter get set. So now let's go to our form 1. I will right click on it and click on view code. And here on my form 1, I will create an instance of my Singleton service. So I will say Singleton service. I will call it underscore Singleton. Okay, and I will create a new instance of my Singleton service. So now the question is, how will I use this service? Well, it's actually very simple. So what I want to do is when I click on counter button, what I want to do is I want to increment the value of counter on my Singleton service. So I will simply say singleton.counter plus plus like this. Okay, and then when I click on get shared data, what will happen is that I will show the value of this counter inside this label here. And the name of this label is, let me check. The name is shared data LBL. Okay, so let's go back to get shared data button click. So here I will simply say shared data LBL dot text will be, and then the value that I want to show is the value of counter from my Singleton service. And since this value here is an integer, what I need to do is I need to convert it into a string. So that is all that we need to do on our form 1, and we will repeat absolutely the same on form 2. So let's go to the code behind of form 2. And here, again, I will create instance of my Singleton service. So I will say Singleton service. I will call it Singleton with underscore. So I want to create a new Singleton service like this. And then let's implement events for our counter and get shared data button clicks. So when I click on counter button, what will happen is I will simply say singleton.counter plus plus. Okay, and then when I click on get shared data button, what will happen is inside my label, I will show the value of this counter. So I will say shared data LBL dot text will be singleton counter dot to string like this. So that is all that we need to do. Now let's start the application and let's see what we have achieved so far. So here are our two forms. And if I click here on counter plus plus, and then I click on get shared data, we will get 1. And then if I click, let's say 2 more times, and then get shared data, we will get 3. Okay. And then if I click here on get shared data, we will get 0. If I click on counter and then get shared data, we will get 1. And then again, we get 2. So this means that clearly these two forms are not sharing the data. So what is actually happening here is that each one of these two forms is creating its own instance of our service, and it has its own value for the counter. So they are not sharing the data, which is actually perfectly okay because we still have not implemented Singleton Design Pattern. So all of the work that we have done so far was just preparing and getting things ready so that now we can implement our Singleton Design Pattern, and you can see how in just a simple few lines of code, you can implement data sharing between these two forms. So now let's stop this application and let's actually go to our Singleton service, and here we will implement Singleton Design Pattern. So as we already said, Singleton Design Pattern means that only one instance of this class can exist in the entire application. And right now, we don't have any code that is preventing this class here to have multiple instances. So right now, we can have as many instances of this class as we want. And in order to prevent that and have just one instance, we need to implement Singleton Design Pattern. And there are 3 steps to do that. So step number 1 is that this class needs to have private constructor. Yes, you heard me well. This class here, in order to be singleton, needs to have a private constructor. Now, most beginners, when they first start learning about object-oriented programming, classes, objects, constructors, and so on, one of the first things that teachers tell them is that constructor always needs to be public. And that is the rule, but there is one exception, and that is singleton service. So singleton service needs to have a private constructor. So let's create a private constructor. I will simply say private singleton service like this. So now that this class has a private constructor, that means that instances of our singleton class cannot be created anymore outside of these 2 curly brackets. So the only place where we can create a new instance of our singleton service is from this curly bracket here till this curly bracket here. So that means that now we will have 2 errors in our solution. The first error will be in the code behind of our form 1. So if I right click on it and click to view code, as you can see, here is our first error. You can see this red squiggly, and it says that singleton service is inaccessible due to its protection level, which means now it is private. I cannot create the instance of this class anymore. So that is the first place where we have an error. And the second place is in the code behind of our form 2. So we will have the same error. As you can see, as well, here we have this red squiggly, which again says that singleton service is inaccessible due to its protection level. Okay, so now let's go back to our singleton service, and now let's see how we can create the instance of this class, because the code that we have previously written, it no longer works. Now, before we start writing any new code, I want you to really understand what we have achieved by making our constructor private, because previously, the constructor was public by default, which means that anywhere in our application, we could simply say new singleton service, and that would create a new instance of this service. So we could have 1, 2, 3, 5, or as many instances as we wanted. But now what we have done is we have said that the constructor is private, which means that we cannot access it anywhere outside of this class, which means that we cannot create an instance of this service anywhere else, but only inside this class. So now we need to provide a way to create that instance, and also we need to make sure that we have only one instance of this service. So we will not allow the creation of 2 or more instances, because remember, singleton means only one instance. So now let's move to step number 2, and let's create a variable where we are going to keep that one instance. That variable is going to be private, so I will create it here. I will say private static singleton service, and I will call it instance with underscore, like this. So this line of code here is step number 2. And please don't worry if you don't understand this here, because in step number 3, all of this will come together. So step number 3 is to create public instance as well. So I will say public static singleton service, and I will create an instance with capital letter I, just to make the difference between public instance and then private instance, which is named with underscore and then lowercase I. Okay, so this public instance will have a getter, which means that we will be able to access this instance outside of our singleton class because it is public. And when we try to access this instance, the code inside this getter will be executed. So now let's see what we should put inside this getter. So here I will say if this private instance is equal to null, which means if it doesn't exist, if our singleton does not exist, in that case, what I want to do is I want to create a new instance. And then after I've done that, I want to return that instance. So once more, what this code here means is when someone tries to access the instance of our singleton class, we will first check if that instance exists. If it is equal to null, that means that it doesn't exist. So we will create a new one and then return it. But if this here results as false, which means this instance already exists, we already have that one instance, in that case, we will not create a new one. This block of code will not be executed. In that case, we will simply move to this line here and we will return that already existing instance. So by doing this, we made sure that only one instance of our singleton service exists in the entire application. Because when we try to access this instance for the first time, we will come here, the instance will be null, so then we will create it and then return it to the first one who has requested it. And then the second time that we request that instance, again, we will come here, but the second time, this here will result as false because the instance already exists. So we will not create it again, we will simply return that already existing instance. And as I said, that will make sure that we have only one instance of our singleton service in the entire application. So those are 3 steps that you need in order to implement Singleton Design Pattern. Let's repeat once more. The first step was to create a private constructor. And the only reason why we are creating private constructor is to prevent anyone outside of this class from creating instances of this class. So we want to control the creation of this instance inside the class itself. So for that reason, I am making private constructor. That is step number 1. And then step number 2 was to create a private singleton service instance. And inside this instance property, we are keeping that actual instance of our singleton service. And then since this here is private, we also need to have a public way to access that instance. So then in step number 3, I have created a public instance of my singleton service. And here I have provided a getter. So inside that getter, we are either creating that instance for the first time and then returning it, or if it already exists, then this part of the code will not be executed and we will simply return that existing instance. And by doing that, we made sure that this singleton service will have only one instance in the entire application. So now, in order to make our application work, we just need to fix 2 errors that we have. So I will go to the code behind of my form 1. And here, this first error where we are trying to create a new instance, this is no longer possible because the constructor is private. So we are not going to create a new instance, but what we will do instead is we will simply say singleton service dot instance. And here we will either create new instance for the first time, or if it already exists, then we will simply get that already existing instance. So now I will copy this line and I will go to the code behind of my form 2. And here as well, we have the same error. So I'm going to paste the code and the error should disappear. And now if I start the application, everything should work. And these two forms should be able to share the data because now we made sure that both of them are accessing our Singleton service, and also we made sure that only one instance of that Singleton service exists, which means that both of them are accessing the same place and both of them should be changing and reading the same data. So if I say get shared data, we will get 0 here and then 0 here. And then if I say counter plus plus, we get 2 here and 2 here. If I click a couple more times here, and then click on get shared data, we get 6 here and then 6 here. And as you can see, our application works and our forms are able to share the data. So in this video, you learned what is Singleton Design Pattern, how to implement it, and how you can share the data between different forms with the help of Singleton Design Pattern. Here we have 2 forms that are sharing the data. Now, if you want, you can add 3rd, 4th, 5th, and so on if you need that. So if you decide to add 3rd form, the code on the 3rd form will look absolutely the same as form 2. You just need to make sure to show that 3rd form so that you can actually see it. So I will leave that part to you so that you can practice and try it out on your own. And if you have any questions or any problems, of course, let me know in the comment section and I will help you. So now that you know what Singleton is and that it means that only one instance of a particular class can exist in the entire application, so we cannot have 2, 3, 4 or more instances of a Singleton class, we can have just one, then you can logically conclude that there is one more benefit to Singleton Design Pattern, and that is saving the memory. Because if you make sure that you can have only one instance, that is going to save a lot more memory than if you have, for example, 2, 3, 5, 100 instances of that class. So that is another benefit of Singleton Design Pattern. So I hope that this video helped you to understand what is Singleton Design Pattern and how to use it. If you have any questions, of course, leave them in the comment section and I will reply. Also, if you want to learn about other important design patterns, if you want to learn about other important topics in programming in general, and if you want to start your career as a software developer, if you want to get the experience necessary for that, work on real projects and get my help in that process, check out the link that I will leave in the description. There you can find a special discount code and a link that will lead you to Code Beauty Academy, which is a place where you can learn practical programming and join a community of successful developers. And you can also get my help and mentorship. So I will teach you all of the career-ready skills and help you to start your career as a software developer. So if you're serious about learning programming and you enjoy my teaching style and want to get my help in that process, join Code Beauty Academy. You can try it out for 7 days for free. If you don't like it for any reason, you will get a full refund, no questions asked. So if you have any questions about the topic of this video or about Code Beauty Academy, leave those in the comment section and I will reply. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up so that I know and I will film more videos about design patterns in the future. So thank you very much for watching and I will see you in the next video. Bye!